All right, so one of the pillars that we talk about with Regal all the time is starting from the ground up. And we thought it'd be important to sit down and kind of talk through the process of us buying our first two females, kind of the timeline of when that was in our lives and what was going through our heads at the time, because it was not exactly planned for then, to say the least. And so we just thought we'd walk you through the story a little bit and really describe how we trusted God, because I feel like we knew that we wanted to have cows someday, but
we had no idea it'd be this quick of a timeline.
Yes, we definitely did not anticipate doing it then. And so to give you guys a little bit of backstory, this happened in 2022, yes. And so we were 2 years into dating. I was living in Fort Worth. Daniel had just taken a new job in Kansas and really fresh to the state, like didn't really know anybody. And we actually were going back up to Wisconsin to move your stuff.
Yes.
And do you want to tell them a little bit about why we even ended up looking at cows that day?
Absolutely. First of all, Alyssa and I always love to do herd visits and just being able to look through other people's livestock. And really, I think it's valuable to, if you can see your operation in their cattle. I think that is truly valuable.
Or just parts of it, yeah.
Or just parts of it. Like if there's a single breeding piece that you really respect and want to add to your breeding stock.
Yeah.
But we went up there that day because we love Doc Beck and his family. Mm-hmm. And just being able to, I've hyped up Doc Beck's cattle so much to Alyssa at this point.
Yeah, and I haven't seen him. Like Doc Beck is his, childhood embryologist. And so, Daniel grew up with him, has went over to his place hundreds of times, but...
Yeah, he's been a real role model for me growing up, and just always respected him and respected his cattle so very much. So I was finally able to rope Alyssa into the car, and we drove up there that day, and we were blown away.
Yeah, and we'll save some of that story for another video of like our first impressions on the cows, but I think, we got in the car and just knew like, man, we thought this was going to be a chapter in our lives for maybe, 5 years into marriage, when we're a little bit more financially secure, when we have the opportunity to have land.
Because we'd only been dating 2 years at this point.
Plus I have like kind of a silly bias against couples who, get pets when they're just dating and not married. It's silly. Tons of our good friends have dogs and cats together, but I was just like, no, I'm never going to do that. Well, turns out we got cows, which is so much more of a commitment. Yeah. But I think it was just trusting that, like, first of all, who we were sourcing these cows from, we love and respect the Beck family immensely, and also respect their eye for cattle. We had very similar like visions and goals for what our future herd would look like.
Yes.
And like that we saw two females that we really felt like described like the foundation of what we wanted to build off of. And I would say we're both pretty strong believers in starting when you're not completely ready.
Absolutely.
And we weren't ready, right? Like he had just moved to Kansas into an apartment of all things, and we didn't even know necessarily, where we were going to house these two females, how that was going to work, but we trusted that the Lord was going to provide in any obstacle. And
we saw him open the door for us.
Oh my gosh,
Like we definitely did. And we're like, okay, God, like we didn't think this was on the timeline whatsoever, but if you're presenting it to us now, we are definitely jumping through.
Yeah.
And it meant like right after we left, we started formulating a business plan.
Yeah. And I think we want to dive really deep into like what that business plan looked like, because obviously like cows is like a passion for us, but we definitely wanted to view it as a business and wanted to make our investment back very quickly. So that was a priority to us, but also just like, man, facing those obstacles of like, where are these females going to go? How are we going to be able to picture them? How are we going to be able to get them there? And like, man, we had so many people just step up and help us and just be so excited for us. I remember like one of my really, really good friends growing up, Derek Hauntz from Muscatine, like we kind of clued him in on the dream that we had and just like our schedules. Daniel was starting a new job. Neither of us own a truck and trailer. And I mean, Derek drove on his like one free day off all the way up to Wisconsin, got him and brought him down to us. And I mean, like just like over and over, there's stories like that of just people hopping in and like God answering some of those like really scary questions we had of how is this going to work. And I think overall it just really showed us like God's timeline, his plan is so much more important and stronger than anything we can imagine in our heads. And, starting Regal then, and we actually ended up buying the cows then and not starting the brand until a year later. But, starting that process then really allowed us to just impact and pour into so many more people than if we waited like 5 years. And I think like, if you follow Regal, you can see it's pretty unconventional what we do, what we post, but we've already been able to see God's hand at work, whether it's, like the Bible Verse Mondays, or the conversations we're able to start. And now with our first 2 actual Regal calves on the ground, it's just like really hitting me that, man, if we would have just waited until we were ready, until we were financially able to purchase our own land, or have the capabilities to own, 25 versus like starting with 2, we would have missed out on so many opportunities to get to know so many people, to be able to pour into so many people. It's just so special.
Yeah, just to kind of sum it up, when we reflect back on these moments, when God opens a door, even if it's not on your timeline, jump through.
Yeah.
And even if there's a million questions that you have in your head about, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Like, you can work on that on the way, definitely. But just make the jump. Do it. And we are so thankful we did. And it has been an absolute blessing. And
and if you're doing that right now, like, we would love to walk with you through the process. I think that's one more thing I wanted to add. Obviously our story is really special to us, but it's just one instance of how people do this all the time. Like, we have some really, really good friends, whether it's in the hog industry or different aspects of the cattle industry that are doing this, that are starting from ground zero and just trusting the Lord to provide. And obviously there's so many learning opportunities, learning situations that you have to go through. But if you're starting from ground zero, like, we want to cheer you on. We want to hear about, what those initial months and years look like for you. So just reach out and share your story with us too. And we hope that, we have so many goals and dreams for Regal, and like the type of cattle we want to raise and the type of impact we want those calves to have on your herd. But ultimately, I would say, like, it is such a big goal, both of ours, to just have some people see our story, see, how you can truly lean into God's plan for your life and say yes, even though it's scary and there's a few unknowns throughout the way.
Absolutely. And I would say, when looking back on our journey, the challenges that we thought would be the most difficult right away are probably the same items that when we look back are the most meaningful memories long term.
Yeah, definitely.